Hey everyone, Jared Sandler with you live from Surprise. I want to quickly run through the Rangers starting rotation and guys who are candidates for the rotation to make the club out of spring training and thus could very well be an option early on in the season if they don't make it right away. So not guys like Ricky Vanasco, Cole Winn, or Jack Leiter, young guys who are definitely a part of the future. Wynn and Vanasco, two guys who could very well pitch in the big leagues this year. Leiter probably not, but they aren't options right now. The goal is to get those guys to the minors and get them to log some innings and get them to have success before giving them that call up. Again, Wynn and Vanasco, you could very well see the big leagues this year. I'd say that it's maybe a probable proposition you see them. Leiter, it'd be incredibly unlikely. I don't think there's any reason for the Rangers to rush him. What we're going to do, I'm just going to go through each guy and give one or two little nuggets for you to chew on. This is not going to be an all-encompassing report on each pitcher. So just some stuff to chew on. Jon Gray, off-season acquisition, hasn't been named yet, but I imagine will be the opening day starter. He's the one guy who does have skins on the wall in this rotation. On the top end of things, who we know will be in there. Martin Perez is the other guy who we're fairly certain will be in the rotation and does have some skins. Younger guys who we'll get to, who we're excited about, but maybe don't have the skins to suggest for sure they're mainstays in the rotation. But with Jon Gray, this is a guy who a lot of people love his fastball, and I think the big thing is just getting him out of Colorado. And when you analyze a player from Colorado, a lot of people will say, okay, well, if it's a pitcher, let's ignore the home splits and look at the road splits. Or if it's a hitter, let's ignore the home and look at the road. But what's unfair about that is these players deal with different environments basically every other week. If you just kind of assume 1 week at home, 1 week on the road, and that inconsistency impacts them. Jon Gray, in trying to find consistency as a pitcher, might throw a breaking ball in Colorado that does one thing, and then he goes on the road to Miami and it does a totally different thing. And it's a challenge for these guys to establish consistency because they never really know, they never really get a consistent feel with their pitches. And then on the hitting side, as an aside here, going to Coors Field is great, but now all of a sudden the movement of a slider or curveball that you got in St. Louis is going to be way different in Colorado. So a lot of people might have stark splits home and road when they play for the Rockies, but there really isn't a lot of evidence to suggest that it tells the full story when they leave Colorado full time, when they're no longer a Colorado Rocky. I think a lot of people are excited about what Jon Gray can do. The fastball's got a lot of great metrics, and this is a guy who has had success even pitching in Colorado in his career, but certainly will benefit from leaving the high altitude. Taylor Hearn, he definitely earned a spot in the rotation with his pitching the second half last year when he was utilized as a starter. I said earlier, they only have two guys with skins on the wall who will be in the rotation. Taylor Hearn doesn't really have skins on the wall the way that Jon Gray or Martin Perez do, but I'd say, with a high level of certainty, he's going to be a starter. That doesn't mean that the Rangers have for sure found a starter of the future. He's got to show it over the course of a full season. He only made 11 starts last year with some other outings that were multiple inning outings, but certainly not as a starter. I think a big key for Taylor is the slider changeup combo. He added a sinker last year to go along with his four-seam fastball. His two fastballs played really well. The slider has got to be more of a swing and miss pitch. He's got to be able to miss bats with that slider and make it a little bit sharper, more of a wipeout slider. The changeup is a pitch he needs to improve upon to deal with righties. It's a really good neutralizer for a left-handed pitcher when facing right-handed hitters. And last year, if you look at Taylor's numbers, righties hit 267 against him, which, as you know, with the dipping offensive numbers well above league average with a near 800 OPS. Lefties hit 198 with an OPS of 630. Now, in general, Taylor only struck out 92 in 104 innings. I think the Rangers feel like he's got the ability to strike out more guys, especially because while he did improve his walk numbers last year, he's not a guy who's going to have the type of impeccable command, at least he hasn't demonstrated yet, where he's going to be near the top of the league in terms of avoiding the walk. But last year was a big step in the right direction for him, getting closer to league average Now the next step is, again, that changeup to neutralize righties and the slider, which he can use against both sides of the plate to hopefully generate some more swings and misses. Dane Dunning, a guy who will be in the starting rotation and was the Rangers pitcher of the year last year. It was a nice first full season in the majors for Dane, 25 starts. He did pitch in 27 games total, 2 games, which he pitched behind an opener. Rangers trying to limit his innings. He threw 117 and 2/3 innings. Dane did a good job of avoiding giving up the long ball. But with Dane, 114 strikeouts, 117 and 2/3 innings. He's a sinker baller. Those guys don't necessarily generate a ton of strikeouts always. He's more the old-fashioned sinker baller, not a guy with a power sinker. I think the Rangers feel like there's more juice in the velocity tank, and Dane can start to develop a little bit of a power sinker. So instead of sitting 89 to 91 with that pitch, maybe get 92 to 94 or even 93, 95. So it'll be interesting to follow that early in the season. But I'd say all in all, a nice season for Dane. I think he showed a lot in terms of just being a solid member of the rotation. The question is he a 4 or 5 in the rotation, or is he someone who can slide into that top half of the rotation? I think we might see some things this year that help us answer those questions. All right, Martin Perez. Really, the thing with Martin is, he's here to give the Rangers some innings. He's here to provide a reliable veteran presence in the rotation. And if some of the young guys earn spots, then maybe he'll push them out, or they'll push him out of the rotation. He could be utilized as a reliever. Last year, 36 total games with Boston, 22 starts. He did come out of the bullpen 14 times. At this point in Martin's career, he's 31 years old, or will turn 31 on April 4th. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. The upside, I think Rangers fans hoped for early on in his career, in his first stint with Texas, probably at this point, not gonna happen. But with a lot of young arms in the rotation, he's a guy who will provide a little bit of, hopefully, stability. AJ Alexy, really powerful stuff, really good stuff. He's got to throw strikes. It's been a challenge for him at all levels. He did do a nice job in the minors last year of improving his walk rate and just ability to throw not just strikes, but good strikes. Last year in the big leagues, 5 games, 4 starts through 23 innings. So super small sample size, but 17 walks in 23 innings. If he can start throwing more strikes, and again, it's not just let's go and throw it over the middle. He's got to be able to throw good strikes. I think there's a lot of optimism that his stuff is going to help take him to the next level. But, with all the guys who are throwing in the mid to high 90s now as starters, it's not as much of a thing anymore. It's still, a really great skill set to have, but guys are used to seeing pitchers who throw like that, and they're not going to just chase and go up there intimidated. So he's got to start throwing better strikes. And if he does, I think he'll do a nice job in the rotation. Colby Allard, one thing we've talked about a ton with Colby Allard is how does he pitch with runners on base? He's been good when no one's on, which is good because if you start, no one is on base to start the game and every subsequent inning. But how is he going to do when he gives up base runners? Last year kind of continued a trend in which he struggled when men were on base. If you look at his numbers with no one on, opposing hitters hit around 240, an OPS of around 752. Still not great, but much better than the 270 batting average they had with runners on in an OPS of around 840. So that's one thing that Colby needs to improve upon. We've also talked about differentiating the cutter and the slider so that those two pitches can be two unique pitches and hopefully make him a little less predictable. Glenn Otto, he did a good job of throwing strikes last year. When he came up after getting traded to the Rangers in the Joey Gallo deal with the Yankees, he's got a good slider. He gave up 32 hits in 23 and a third innings. Was it bad luck? I guess we'll find out. The Rangers have talked about how he's added on some strength to maybe create a little more power and some power that will sustain throughout a start. I just think with Glenn, it's getting everything a little bit better because last year he became very fastball slider happy. And I think hitters after his first couple of starts were able to kind of figure out how the book read a little bit. And so now, a little more variance to make him a little less predictable. Spencer Howard is maybe the most interesting man who is a potential starter for the Rangers, a former top prospect, the number one prospect in the Phillies system. He was at times deemed untouchable in trade talks with Philadelphia. He had a really weird tenure with the Phillies at the big league level, moved from the rotation to the bullpen, back to the rotation to the bullpen, and consistency just wasn't there. And it's tough for a young guy to develop in that sort of an environment. The Rangers hope that they can get Spencer within their grasp and help him develop. Now, the lockout probably hurt Spencer Howard as much as anyone because the Rangers' big plans in working with him this offseason weren't allowed because of the lockout. Spencer's a guy who early on in outings flashes great velocity and really sharp stuff, but it seems to have a pretty precipitous drop as he gets past the 30 pitch mark. So sustaining that velocity and that stuff will be important. Also, the changeup, it's a pitch that has been very inconsistent for him. At times it's been a good pitch, at other times he just can't locate it. And it also is a somewhat easy to pick up pitch out of his hand. The Rangers hope to create a little more deception there by doing something that we've talked about before called tunneling, which basically is a pitcher's ability to make different pitch types look the same as long out of their hand as it goes towards the plate as possible. Brock Burke, I think with Brock, let's just get him healthy. Let's keep him healthy. He'll start the season in AAA in all likelihood. Would love for Brock to stay healthy and then allow him to develop. Without health as a pitcher, you can't really develop. He did return to professional action last year, just dipping his toes back in the water. The results weren't great, but it's the first time he had pitched in almost 2 years. I think just getting Brock Burke healthy is going to be a good thing, and we'll be able to then better diagnose kind of what those next steps are. And then Matt Moore kind of falls in the Martin Perez boat, a veteran who will give you innings. He's another guy who could be used as a starter or a reliever. Again, these are just, I guess, most of the guys who we think the Rangers are considering for the rotation, maybe all the guys they're considering for the rotation, not including guys like Cole Winn, Jack Leiter, Ricky Vanasco, three really young pitchers who we've already seen in Cactus League games. Leiter, again, won't be a big leaguer this year. Vanasco and Winn very well could be big leaguers this year, but they're not going to be considered right away on opening day or shortly thereafter. Hope you learned a thing or two. Looking forward to talking some more Rangers baseball with you.